Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
Thank you for joining me for another edition of the Bob Sullivan Show here on latenightsportsradio.com. Tonight, I'm joined here in hour number one by Jameson Welsh of BelieveTheHypeNBA.com. Jameson, it's been a long time. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Bob, man. Thanks for having me. Definitely appreciate it. It's that time of year in the NBA world. Things are kind of slow, but there's always something going on. But it's a pretty good times, man. Not a whole lot of complaints.
Yeah, it's, the free agency, it was, I guess there was no LeBron movement or anything like that, but, I still feel like there's something coming here. I feel like there's a big move that's going to happen before the season starts by a trade. I'm not sure exactly what it is. Do you see anything happening with the Cavs trade-wise? Do you see a Joe Johnson coming to the Cavs? What do you look at from the Cavs perspective?
I mean, I see where you're coming from. I mean, it feels like there's one more move to be made somewhere along the line, whether it's with the Cavs or with the team out west. It seems like there's a move to be made. I don't know what's going to happen. I think we may not see a move until probably close to the training camp because all the cap stuff has pretty much all been worked out. But you have a very good point because we don't know what's going to happen. There's always something going on. There's always something going on behind the scenes, and something may happen. I mean, hell, no one would have thought Ty Lawson would have been given away, but 2 DUIs in a 6-month span change everything. So you just never know what happens until it actually happens.
Do you think he's a good fit in Houston?
I think he's an okay fit. I mean, when he's healthy, when he's right, he's the best point guard in that roster. Only problem is this: James Harden has to have the ball in his hands a lot to be effective, and I don't know how that's going to work. I mean, for what they got him for, even if it's a bad fit, it's a good fit. But I don't know if you're going to see Ty Lawson get 10 assists a game like he did last year. So it's an interesting piece. But for Houston, it adds another guy that they can move in and trade if need be. It's another asset that they can add. That Houston's always looking to wheel and deal, so it's a good problem to have for Houston. My thing is this: Houston's a place where if you want to party, do a lot of things outside of the court, you can. And how is he going to control himself in that regard? I'm more worried on him off the court than on the court. On the court, he's a talented player. You know what you're going to get. Off the court is a different issue.
Who would you start between him and Beverly right now?
Oh, you got to start Beverly right now because, one, Beverly's not going to be suspended. That's first and foremost. Secondly, Patrick Beverly is a guy that he has the most chemistry with those guys. He fits in well with those guys at the moment. If you're going to start Lawson, you don't want to do that until later on in the season. You don't want to come in just handing Lawson a spot when he hasn't really done anything on this roster and in this locker room. So Beverly's the starter right now. You want Ty Lawson playing 20, 25 minutes, getting himself mentally right first. And then if you need him to play, you can play smaller units. You can do a lot of different things. But you want to have him get his feet wet with this group of guys first before you take that next step.
Mm-hmm. Sacramento made some, interesting moves. I definitely think the association should follow that team around this year with all those pieces together and do kind of uncut. Please don't edit it for TV or anything. I want to see unfiltered, raw Sacramento Kings, which I'm surprised I'm saying that. But, Boogie Cousins, you got Rondo, you got Carl. What do you think? I feel like this is either a 7 or 8 seed in the West or just a complete dumpster fire and nothing in between. I don't, what do you see from this team?
Oh, no, you're absolutely. It's either going to be really good or really bad. There is no in-betweens. Literally, there is no in-between at all because there's a lot of combustion. There's a lot of room for error with that roster. There's a lot of room for issues and a lot of room for things to happen. So there's more negatives than positives at the moment. And it's hard to give anyone a benefit of the doubt in Sacramento because they haven't been doing things good up there in a very long time. So it's very difficult to say, oh, okay, yeah, they're going to get this stuff right. They've been doing well for the last such and such year. Like, no, they have a lot of weird personality guys. They have a weird coach, a lot of things going on up there. They have an owner that doesn't know what he's doing, front office that doesn't know what they're doing. So don't be surprised at whatever happens up there, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. I wouldn't be surprised if they're a 6th seed, or I wouldn't be surprised if they're a 14th seed in the West, because there's a lot of stuff going up there, and there's nothing really consistent outside of Marcus Cousins playing at a high level. Everything else is a huge wild card at the moment.
The LA Clippers kind of, similar thing with the bringing in Lance Stevenson, kind of a wild card, bringing in Paul Pierce, which I'm actually interested to see how, they manage, with, Paul Pierce, not a question mark, but Lance Stevenson, how he's going to fit in with all those guys. Do you see him being an issue at all for them other than his play? Do you see his personality being an issue in that locker room? Or do you think the main issue is whether he shows up to play or not?
Well, I think with Lance, the biggest issue is can he stay focused when things don't go exactly his way? When there's some adversity that strikes, what does Lance do? Does Lance pout and, start becoming a distraction? Or does he work with veterans and figure it out? There's a lot of guys on that team that are better than him. And there's a lot of guys on that roster that have, done more things than he has done. So hopefully he's in a situation where he can go to some guys on the team and be like, hey, you know what, I need your help. I need your help, instead of trying to figure out things on his own and try to take things into his own matters, because he's just not at that point in his career right now where he can do that. I think Lance is talented enough to help the Clippers. I really do. Talent's never been Lance's issue. The biggest issue with Lance is, can he be focused enough, and can he be on the right path most of the game? Because if his talent is utilized correctly, the Clippers are a better team than they were last year. If he's a distraction, then you have another problem on your hands, because they're counting on Lance to do a lot of the ball handling on the second unit and to provide a lot of different things on that unit. If he's not able to do that, they really don't have anyone in his place that can really replace him. So he's a huge question mark for that team right now.
Do you think with him, if he puts up, numbers like he did, well, the numbers in Indiana, he was efficient, and, he's getting rebounds, getting assists, scoring, but at an efficient rate. He dropped off in all those categories in Charlotte, put up, not similar numbers, but scoring-wise was a disaster. He was like, one of the worst shooting guards in the league, probably the worst shooting guard in the league last year. I feel like if you just put up the numbers he put up in Charlotte, but at a more efficient pace, that's fine. But you can't have him jacking up threes. You can't have him missing free throws. If he just puts up those numbers, but at a much more efficient rate, I think he would be fine. But if he's taking too many shots, that's when you're going to get into trouble with Lance Stevenson on your roster if you're the Clippers.
Right. Yeah, he's just not that guy. He's not that guy that you want, taking over shots, taking over games. Especially if you have Chris Paul on your team, that is the main playmaker. In Indiana, remember, he was like the third or fourth option at times on that roster. They had Paul George, they had David West, they had Hibbert when he was playing well. So they had other guys they could have gone to an offensive end. So Lance was never the primary focus of the defense. He was never the guy that people were like, okay, we need to stop him first. Now, when he goes to Charlotte, he's the primary perimeter option. So everything changed when the defense game plans and scouts for you, things change, and he wasn't really ready for that, and I don't think he was prepared for that, honestly, mentally. I don't think he was mentally prepared for that. It's a totally different thing when you're able to play off an all-star player like Paul George, but when you're the guy that teams key in on game in and game out, it's a mental thing just as much as it is a physical and talent thing, and he wasn't ready to answer the bell at that time. Hopefully he's learned from that. Hopefully he can adjust this coming year, even though he will not be the best player on this team, whether it's on the perimeter overall. My thing with him is mentally. Where is he going to be at mentally? Because he's the guy that doesn't have a whole lot of chances left in this league. Remember, he came in as a second-round pick because there's a lot of baggage. Had a lot of questions in Indiana. Some good and some bad stuff happened there. Last year was a disaster. He's another disaster year or two away from being out of the league.
With looking also in L.A. at the Lakers, bringing in Hibbert, Brandon Bass, Lou Williams, the draft D'Angelo Russell. You got Julius Randle coming back from injury. You know, Jordan Clarkson's in his second year. Kobe coming back from injury. You know, this roster is not terrible, but it's also not, you know, it's not an ideal roster. But I think this is kind of a good bridge roster into while these young guys like Randall, Russell, Clarkson learn to play together. I think it's a nice little roster to have around them. Do you see them having a chance at making the playoffs? And what do you think it hinges on? Do you think it hinges on Kobe's health? Do you think it hinges on, you know, what you get from Nick Young or Lou Williams? What do you see from this team right now?
Well, someone has to have a season to where you look like, whoa, like where did this come from? Whether it's Clarkson or Russell or Randall, someone has to have damn near an all-star season. And we have to like, okay, well, that's why they're here. I don't know if that's going to happen this year. I'm leaning toward it's not happening. I mean, for them to make the playoffs, D'Angelo Russell would have to probably win Rookie of the Year, and Julius Randle would have to be like a 17-point a night guy. I don't know if those things are going to happen. I do think the roster is better than advertised. That doesn't mean much, but I do think it's better than advertised. I do think you're going to see the roster win some games it shouldn't. I think they're going to be on 30 wins, maybe 35 wins, because if they're healthy, and their health has been an issue the last couple of years. The teams have been bad, but the health has been bad as well. They've lost guys for the season. It's not like they've lost guys for a week or a month. They've lost guys for, 50-plus games and, for the full season. I mean, hell, they lost Julius Randle before the end of Game 1 last year. So, I mean, that's been a bigger issue for the Lakers. Anything else has been the health issue. So we'll see what happens going forward. But if they can stay healthy, they can be competitive in the Western Conference. The playoffs are just too much to ask for. That's not fair toward their roster, toward anything going on right now with that team. But the key for them is to have positive momentum going into next summer. You want to have positive momentum. You want to see the young guys play well. So when, free agents come for those meetings, you actually have an on-court presentation offer, not just sit in the back and like, we have L.A. Like, no, guys want to play the basketball. So you got to have basketball reasons for guys to come here, not just the other part of L.A. that's south of your guys. So we'll see what happens, but I'm not optimistic about the playoffs, but I do think they'll be a much competitive team than they were the last couple of years.
I like the, last year, during the playoffs, I said, I wish Kobe would take a role similar to a Vince Carter or Paul Pierce. Vince Carter was a little different, but like Paul Pierce did in Washington, where he goes to a young team and, he's that guy, to kind of, not do much but finish games for them. And I said that with Kobe, that I thought it would be kind of cool if he went to a New Orleans or, some small market team a young team where he could be that, that veteran guy in the last couple of years, hitting shots, getting them to the next round, whatever it may be. I thought that would be kind of cool. And, obviously it would never happen. But we're kind of in that situation now with the Lakers, kind of a young team, veterans in kind of a similar spot to where they had veterans in Washington. But I would like to see, if the Lakers make the playoffs, I think, and Kobe stays healthy, I'd love to see him in that kind of role. Hit a big shot here or there, be that guy to finish for these young guys that aren't ready for that role. I'm not a huge Kobe fan, but I would love to see him in the twilight of his career do something like that with a young team.
Well, the key is this. The key for Kobe is, one, to be healthy. That's first and foremost. The health has been the issue with him more than anything else. But now, this year, there's no excuse for him to be shooting a lot of bad shots. Like, just come out gutting. There's no real excuse for him to, play like he was the first part of last season. He can pass the ball a lot more. He can work off the ball. He has a point guard that's going to get him in his spots, get the ball in his spots where all he has to do is shoot. So he's going to be in a really good situation. My thing is with him is, how is he going to help the young guys? Like, how is he going to help those guys get better? Because that's his role in this team now. Because we know this is probably not a playoff team. His biggest role in this team is, how is he going to make these guys better? Because he does make guys better in different ways. But how is he going to help these young guys develop and get better That's how it's going to go. And how these guys are going to get better game to game and month to month is going to be the bigger question. Because we all know Kobe can score. Kobe can score all day, every day. We know that. But what's going to happen, these young guys' development, the guys that are going to eventually take his spot, their development is more important than Kobe scoring 25 points tonight.
In my opinion, I don't see – if you see, like, if they get if they're like 9 or 10 or on the front, like, just barely get beat out for the playoffs, I don't see any way he doesn't come back next year. Do you?
It depends how his body is, honestly. And I don't think the Lakers want him to come back. I mean, as crazy as it sounds. When you guys are 20 years in the league, there's only so much the body can go through. And whenever you start getting a guy that old on your team, it's just very difficult to, one, count on them because they're going to get hurt one way or another. And another thing, it's also difficult to develop your younger guys and turn the team over to them because whenever you have Kobe on the team, he's going to be the guy on the team. Like, that's just how it is. Whether people like it or not, he's going to be the dominant force in the locker room, in the meetings and whatnot. So eventually Lakers have to move on from that era. I know a lot of fans don't like that. I get it. But at the end of the day, you got to move on from that era. You have to move on, and you got to move on to D'Angelo Russell, Jordan Clarkson, and Julius Randle, and whoever else on the team at that point. You got to move on. You got to establish something else. I mean, 20 years is a long time. I mean, there's only a handful of players that have played 20 years. And to expect anything more than that, it's very difficult. And also, older 21 in the league year Kobe doesn't really help the Lakers in their current state. Like, he doesn't really help them. That's the thing. He doesn't. It's not like they're a piece away. He's that piece. Like, nah, that doesn't work. So I don't. In the organization, I don't see them making a hard charge to bring him back one way or another, unless they end up being like a top 4 seed, which I don't see happening. But if that happens, that's different. But other than that, no, I don't see them making a huge push to bring him back. Honestly, I don't know if his body's going to make it through a full season. Like, I've been telling people, you want to see Kobe Bryant, you better go see him in November or December.
With looking at LaMarcus Aldridge to the Spurs, I know a lot of people love that move because it's the Spurs, but, there's, I mean, if you look, at Laker fans or whatever, they'll put out the stats about LaMarcus Aldridge. And, there's always the bitter story from, Portland writers about when a guy leaves, there's always going to be that story about why it's good for the franchise for some guy to leave. With Aldridge going there, it's not like he's a spring chicken or anything. The guy's 30. So it's not, he might have two or three really good years left in him and then kind of go into his twilight. Do you like the fit of LaMarcus? Do you see any negatives? What's your take on this move?
I mean, it's okay. Like, it's okay. It's not, I mean, whenever you add a guy that's starting an all-star game in the West, it's always a good thing. Like, don't get me wrong. But I don't think it's the move that puts them over the top. I still think they have issues at the point guard spot, even though I like Ray McCollum. I don't know if he's a guy you can play for 30 minutes tonight because we know Tony Parker has issues with injuries, and he hasn't been the same over the last couple of years. And outside of Kawhi Leonard, they don't have a whole lot of athleticism on the perimeter. So we'll see what happens. I do like the fit. I don't know if LaMarcus Aldridge is the guy you can eventually turn the whole thing over to, but he's a good secondary piece for them. So I like it a lot. I do like it. I'm not in love with it, but I do like it. It's a good fit, but I still think the West goes through Oakland at the end of the day. I think in the Western Conference, you got to look at the Warriors as the best team in the West until otherwise. So still proven otherwise. They're just too good. They're too young. That's the thing. They're too young. And they've already had experience. So it's not like anything they say they'll bring them, going to scare them. They've been through everything and whatnot. So my thing is, what does San Antonio do to present a scare in the Warriors? I don't see it at the moment. The only team in the West I think that the Warriors should fear is OKC, not San Antonio.
I agree with you. And, I mean, it all depends on health of Kevin Durant. But, yeah, I agree. The Thunder, people ripped on them for re-signing Cantor, but I don't understand how that's yeah, they paid a little too much. But I mean, yeah, they didn't re-sign Harden. Get over it. At this point, a Cantor, Adams, Baca front court. I mean, that's not horrible. And I mean,
it's
actually,
not
that's pretty good. And
it's really not bad at all.
You got Durant. You got Durant. You got Singler to come off the bench. Obviously we've seen what Westbrook can do. I'm not so concerned about Durant's foot. The injury aspect. I mean, I know I should be, but if it's a matter of him and Westbrook. Who? I guess it hasn't been a huge issue in the past, but can they coexist now that we know what Russell Westbrook can do, and with all the eyes on Westbrook, not Durant? It's Durant. How is Durant going to fit back into this team with the way Westbrook was playing at the end of the year? Not that the team was playing great with Westbrook, but how is he going to fit back in? And I think it's a matter of how Durant handles those questions about him fitting back into what was once his team is going to be more of an issue than his health. Do you agree with that?
I think they'll be okay. I really do. I think when it comes down to it, when you look at the way the Thunder are, they don't have like a 1-2 pecking order type of deal. Both guys take their turns in terms of going off. They go off at the same times in a lot of cases. So I don't think you have an issue there. I think the biggest issue you have is health, because we all know Kevin Durant's coming back from injury, but also Russell Westbrook is, he gets hurt almost every year now. Even though they're minor injuries, he's still getting hurt more often than not. I think that's more of an issue than more people are thinking about. So that's the question I have is, can he stay healthy? Because if he stays healthy, then they'll be okay. But, Westbrook's injuries and Ibaka, those guys got to stay healthy. Their core has to stay healthy. They've had a lot of injuries over the past couple of years that pretty much derailed them to get to a finals. So if they can stay healthy, they'll be okay. But if they're not, they have a lot of issues because they don't have a lot of depth at those spots where those guys play to, make up for that output. I know they can score because Cantor can score, Deion Waiters can score, a couple other guys can score, but, what Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook bring you, they bring you the total package at their positions, and they're not replaceable. So it's very difficult when they go out. They don't have anyone to step in and give them 70% of what they lost. They're just out of luck. And that's been the biggest issue the last couple of years.
Do you like the addition of Billy Donovan?
He's okay. He's not great. He's okay. I got to see, because this is an all-in year for them. This is an all-in year for the Thunder. You have Kevin Durant being a free agent, Russell Westbrook being a free agent next summer, the summer after, and you have expectations in the West. So I don't know. On paper, it looks better because Scott Brooks just wasn't that good. But, man, I don't know much about Billy Donovan on the pro level. This is a very tough spot because if things start out rocky, they're in trouble. Because in the West, if you have an injury or you have a slow start in the West, you can be fighting from behind the whole season, and that's just that's just not ideal going forward. You don't want to be 40 games in and you're 5 or 6 games out of the playoffs, and every game is a must-win game. You don't want to be in that kind of predicament. So it's going to be very interesting to see what exactly takes place. That team gets off to an early start to create all the positive energy they can muster up.
If you're with Billy Donovan, I just don't, if you're him, obviously you take that job. But Oklahoma City, I guess if you're Oklahoma City, I just didn't really, Scott Brooks, yeah, you got to get away from that. That was never he was never coach, the recipe for success there. But I also didn't feel like there was very many options for OKC to go. That would better their situation, and I feel like Billy Donovan is kind of, not a lateral move, but just slightly above that, just like one, a couple points ahead of that. And I mean, I don't know. He looks like he's getting along with Durant at the summer league, but you can take that with a grain of salt with how they look on TV. So I'm just not sure, with that Donovan is the right guy, but I don't think he's necessarily the wrong guy, at least not yet. I mean, we'll have to give this 25 games to kind of see what we're going to get out of him. And a healthy roster.
We need to see them go. We need to see how they survive adversity because, hey, I'll put it this way: whenever the Warriors had adversity this past year, they overcame it. And OKC seems to have a lot of adversity all the time with injuries and other things going on. We'll see what happens because, hey, as of right now, we don't know what the hell is going to happen, with Kevin Durant's health, Russell Westbrook's health, Serge Ibaka's health, and their futures with the team. So we need to see exactly what's going to go on first before we take any, we need to see them go to a good start and be healthy for the first 40-some-odd games before we have any other expectations. Because with talent, with the roster they have, yes, they look impressive. But we just don't know what we're going to get going forward. We really don't.
Looking in the East looking at Dallas really quick before we go to the East. Obviously, this team's going to have a rough go of it. But the addition of DeAndre Jordan, does that really make, I know it screwed them, but even if they add him, does that make them any more than a 6 seed in the West? I just didn't, with or without him, I don't see that being a big deal. The problem then it left them stranded as far as being able to go out and get another guy.
Exactly. That's the biggest issue because basically when you go all in like that, you tie up your money, you tie up your other obligations in one guy. So when you're on hold for 3 or 4 days, you're not thinking about any other backup plans. So you figure you have your guy. Now, my thing with this is that move doesn't help them be a contender, but it puts them in the right direction to where they're another move or two away from them becoming a contender. So that's why I understand why they try to make the move. But I have a lot of questions about Dallas because they're, Parsons and Wesley Matthews have injuries. They have injury issues. And one guy's torn off an Achilles that has proven that doesn't get better with time. Like that.
No.
That injury does not get better, for guys. It just doesn't. And Parsons has had knee issues last year and a half. So I don't know what's really going on with the Mavs. They have some decent names, but they're not a playoff team in the Western Conference. They really aren't. I just don't see it. Even if DeAndre was there, they wouldn't be a lock for the playoffs. They'd be a lot easier, but they wouldn't be a lock. And also, Dirk is older. Dirk's a year older. That doesn't help. He's a guy that cannot carry you for a full season anymore, or full games anymore. He can carry you for a quarter, maybe a quarter and a half, and he can't carry you for a full season. So I don't know what's going to happen with it. It's a very weird situation over there in Dallas.
Do you think Utah might be a playoff team this year?
They're the team that people are picking right now. And honestly, I like the pick. I need to see more from them. I need to see them when people are game planning for them and people are looking to take them out, rather than them being the team that people are overlooking or them being the team that people are saying, oh, they're still the Jazz. Now there's expectations. And I'm going to talk with Gordon Hayward about that this week. Hey, what's going on? Because last year it was controlling expectations, it being a learning experience. This year, there's expectations of making the playoffs. So we'll see what's going on. Personally, I don't know. They have some questions in their backcourt. Their guard play was bad last year, and they really didn't improve upon that. They get Alex Burks back, but he's the guy that after he played off torn ACL. They lost Dante Exum for the year already. Trey Burks is not a starting guy. I don't know. It's really hard to say what's going to happen with this roster. They can be a 6th seed in the West if everything breaks right, but they also can be an 11th seed in the West again if everything breaks wrong.
In the East, Bulls get rid of Thibodeau, bring in Fred Hoiberg. Don't really do much roster-wise. They bring back Jimmy Butler. A lot of people are making a lot out of Butler and Rose and whether they can coexist or not. And people don't understand why they aren't friends or something like that. It's like, okay, how many of your coworkers are you friends with? And, how many of your coworkers do you want to see when you're done working? And my answer to that is usually 0. But I don't understand why people expect these two to be best friends. I mean, a team can work without your two best players being best friends. I mean, they have once they're at work, they have to get along well enough to make it work. Even in that situation, this roster, broken down Noah, who knows what you'll get out of Powell this year. He had a rebirth last year. I don't see that happening again this year. Taj Gibson, had an okay year. I kind of see him needing to move on at some point. And then they re-signed Mike Dunleavy for a little bit too much money. Is this kind of a dumpster fire right now, in your opinion, Chicago?
Actually, I think they'll be okay. Like, honestly, I think they'll be okay. I think the Bulls are a team that they needed a change, in direction. They needed a change in coaching. They just weren't going to go over the hump with the current methods they were doing things at. Now, I don't know what Fred Hoiberg's going to bring to the table in the pros. I really don't. But I think offensively, they'll be better. I think you'll probably see them move either Taj Gibson or Joakim Noah to get a more offensive type of guy in the front court. They may add another offensive-minded player in the front court. So I can see that happening because Fred Hoiberg's an offensive-minded guy. He had a very pro-style offensive system with a lot of guys who were able to handle the ball at Iowa State, a lot of three-point shooting and spacing. So with that being said, I can see him trading offense for defense or defense for offense up there with some of the guys he has on the roster. So we'll see. I mean, it really remains to be seen what takes place. But I think it's a change in philosophies and a change in attitude and the coaches. Fred Hoiberg's more of a player's guy, so guys will like him and they won't get drug out by long practices or anything like that. I think it's a positive for the Bulls. I still think the Bulls are a top 4 team in the East.
Looking elsewhere in the East, with Miami, getting Justice Winslow, they bring back Deng, Wade's back, bring back Goran Dragic. Do you like this roster? And one, do you think people are overbuying this roster? And two, do you think that if the pieces stay healthy, they can give the Cavs a run?
If Miami are fully healthy and everything breaks right for them, they can represent the East in the finals. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's a possibility if things break right for them. They have a lot of good things going for them, but things got to break right. I don't know. There's just too many question marks to say if things are going to break right. But they have some guys that can play. I mean, Chris Bosh is still an all-star player. Hassan Whiteside was really good last year. Luol Deng and Goran Dragic are above-average players. And Dwayne Wade, when healthy, is a really good player. So they have a lot of good things going for them. I just got to see it actually play out first. I got to see them in action. And honestly, when it comes down to it, I don't know. There's too many guys with too many health issues on this team for me to say, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. They're one of those wait-and-see teams because you got to really wait and see what they do. But on paper, I love the team on paper.
Do you see? I don't really see any. The Cavs didn't really do anything to improve themselves in the offseason, in my opinion. I get Irving coming back and Love coming back healthy. That's important. But I don't see, even with them doing very minimal stuff, do you see anybody really that they should be scared of in the East? I think the Hawks drop off a little bit. Wizards I don't think are quite ready. Toronto, no. Miami and Chicago possibly, but that's about it. I don't see anybody really giving them a run for their money. Do you?
I like the Wizards. The Wizards are a team that they've been in the playoffs the last few years. They've been to the second round the last couple of years. They've been through a couple of wars. I'm not saying they're going to beat the Cavs. I'm not saying that because I don't think they can do that at the moment, presently constructed. But they do have two guards that can give the Cavs issues, make things very difficult on that end. I think Bradley Beal's going to be an all-star type player this upcoming year. I think he takes the lead that Klay Thompson took last year for the Warriors. So I do think if you have a backcourt in the all-star game, then you're going to be in any series you're with. The issue with them is, can guys like Otto Porter step up another notch? Like, that's going to be their key. Can those kind of guys, those young guys, can Kelly Oubre give them something? those are the questions I have for the Wizards. I think the Wizards are going to be fine. They're going to be a top 4 or 5 team in the East again. But can their role guys play well? Can their role guys play well? And can they add some depth in the front court? Because they need some big man depth. I'm not really sold on Jared Dudley as a small ball 4 a whole lot. I know he takes Pierce's spot, but I need to see him healthy and in shape before anything happens. So we'll see. I'm not as sold on them, but I like them a lot. I just need to see them in action first.
I guess I left the Bucks off of there. They're not. I don't think they're contender types yet, but I feel like they're a year or two away possibly from being a legit, Eastern Conference contender.
Well, the Bucks.
They need a lot. They need a couple more things, but
yes, they need a couple more things. They need a couple of guys to take that next step. Giannis Antetokounmpo needs to take that next step, and they have a couple other guys. Michael Carter Williams needs to take that next step before they're level contenders. But they are very well coached. Greg Monroe is a good player for them, and Rashad Vaughn's going to be a good rookie for them. But a lot of guys need to take that next step before we can truly consider them contenders.
Looking at the Knicks, do you see a scenario where Melo possibly gets dealt at the trade deadline?
If they're bad again, if they're really bad, and it's to the point where they're better off moving him than keeping him, then yes. But right now I don't see them moving him because he still brings people to the games and whatnot. And they got some decent signings, but they're just not good enough. They're just the team as a whole. They're just not good enough at the moment. So we got to wait and see with them. I just don't like what I really see with that club right now. I don't like what I see, the direction they're going in, and also the stuff that's going on over there. I don't like what I see. But what I will say is this: I think it would be best for all parties in that situation to go a different direction. I think it would be best for Carmelo to leave and go his own separate way. I think it'd be better for the Knicks to start over fresh with some draft picks and some younger players. But at the same time, the guy running this shit in his 60s or 70s, so I don't know if he can really press the reset button like that, but it'd be in the best interest for all parties involved.
When I heard after the draft when they took Papazingas, whatever, how you pronounce it, everybody acting like it's such a slap in the face, so disrespectful to take a player like that to Melo. I never got that. It's like, okay, yes, Melo's a really good player, but okay, was there a player there? Yeah, Justice Winslow's good. Stanley Johnson's good. Moutier's pretty good. But was there a player right there? It's not like they passed on a Russell or an Okafor. I don't feel like there should be just unbelievable, oh, that is so disrespectful to Melo. Personally, I would have liked to seen them, trade down for a couple picks, whatever. But I'm not, completely off of K-Pop on this. But I thought it was ridiculous, the reaction to that pick, and for people to act like it was such a disrespectful move for Melo. Did you buy into any of that?
Well, I thought they should have went with Moutier. I thought Moutier was the best player on the board. I thought he was the guy that, he was the best guy available for what they're trying to do. He's the best player. They're a rebuilding team. When you're a rebuilding team, you don't pick fit. You pick the best guy available. And I thought Moutier would be the guy that helps them win right now. Not 2 or 3 years down the line, but right now. Now, Porzingis is going to be cool, but Moutier could be an all-star player. And he can be an all-star player in the next 3 years if things go right. So that was my thinking. But other than that, it wasn't a bad pick. I don't think the pick was bad. I just thought they could have went in different directions. I'm not high on Justice Winslow like a lot of other people are, but, hey, they didn't mess up. I'll put it that way. They didn't mess up that pick. But the Kings messed up that pick. The Kings, they could have went in a lot of different directions, and they went in the worst direction. The Kings could have gotten, they could have gotten the Moutier, and they would have been a lot better off than picking up Rondo personally. So we'll see what happens. But, yes, Moutier was the guy that slipped unnecessarily. He's going to make a lot of teams pay for that, too.
Well, Jameson, before I let you go, do you want to tell everybody where we can find you on Twitter, the internet, all that good stuff.
Not a problem, Bob. Definitely appreciate you having me on. On Twitter at Pete Jamieson, TheeJamieson. This upcoming week, I'll be on the Score 670 out in Vegas, live from 10 to 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Tuesday and Wednesday. Let's see, Fox Sports 1340 in New Mexico, Tuesday morning, ESPN 1480 in Nebraska, and also KOAL 750 Wednesday or Thursday, talking all things sports, mainly NBA, but mostly all things sports.
All right, awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and we'll definitely do this again soon. Hope done with baseball, so now I can do these a little bit more often. So hopefully soon, man.
Not a problem, man. Thanks for having me as always, man. Definitely appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.